Hello and welcome to the Sweet Southern Sports Podcast, where we look at SEC sports. Today we'll be looking at the football team for South Carolina Gamecocks for the 2025 preseason predictions. And first, let's get their keys to a strong season. So the first thing off is Super Sellers. So Lenore Sellers is their QB this year. He had a crazy year last year. This kid can throw the football. He runs the football like so athletically for a quarterback. He's a big guy. He gives very Cam Newton type feels when he plays football. It's just insane. I think it's going to be huge that he gets them wins this year. I think there's going to be a lot of close games, which is actually the third one to stay close, lean on momentum, and then also winning the coaching battle. I think for this team, this is the most wild card team in the SEC, just based on their abilities to have star players scattered throughout their team. But then also they should be in a lot of close contests. They have Dylan Stewart, who's a monster on D end. He's going to be crazy. He'll be a very high draft pick. I think he could cause chaos in a lot of opposing backfields with their very tough schedule. Really, when it comes to the Gamecocks, it really comes down to really just winning those 50-50 ball and just really making big plays. They should be a really exciting team to watch. So let's look at their schedule. So first, they start off with Virginia Tech, and that is in Atlanta, and it's actually on a Sunday. So really cool. Against Virginia Tech, I think they'll be able to handle them. I think it will be close at first, but I think Sellers will kind of take over in that second half, and they'll get the W there. They then go on for a pretty easy stretch. So they have South Carolina State. That will be an easy one for them. Vandy could be tough. They have them at home, though. I think they handle Vandy. It may be one of those second half games, though, but South Carolina should handle them. At Missouri will be tough for South Carolina, but I think Missouri is still trying to find themselves as a football team, especially at this early in the year. I think South Carolina will find a way to win. Again, that could be one of those sneaky games that they trip up and lose, but I think if South Carolina comes ready to go, they'll win that one. Then they have Kentucky. Again, Kentucky's very much like Missouri. They're kind of trying to find themselves. I think Kentucky's in for a very tough year this year. I think South Carolina will handle them pretty easily at home. And then they go into a bye week. This next stretch is one of the most brutal stretches. They have one of the toughest schedules in the country, probably top five, in my opinion, when it comes to the South Carolina team. So South Carolina has at LSU. LSU will be a really good team this year. They have a lot of weapons. I do think that LSU ends up winning this one. That South Carolina just can't keep up with that offense, even with Sellers. Sellers will make a lot of plays, but on the road, it's just going to be too much for that LSU to overcome that LSU offense. And then next, they have Oklahoma. So Oklahoma will be a really good team. I think a lot of people are sleeping on them. They have a really veteran quarterback with Mateer back there, and they just have a lot of returning production when it comes to defense and on the offensive side of the ball. And I think they've made some pretty big changes with Venable making some choices with the new offensive coordinator as well. So when it comes to Oklahoma, I do think this will be a really good game. I am gonna go with the making this a very 50-50 game, and I'll go with the home team, which is the South Carolina Gamecocks in this case. So I do think the Gamecocks do win this one against Oklahoma. But then the next one, they have Alabama at home. I think this will be a gigantic game, especially at this point in the season. We're saying that South Carolina would be sitting at 6-1 with Alabama coming into town. I think this will be a ginormous game. Could even be a college game day level game on October 25th. I do think with that crazy environment for the South Carolina Gamecocks, I think this will be one of those late afternoon or nighttime games. I think this game will be rowdy and insane. I'm going to have to go with South Carolina getting one of those crazy October upsets, or they also call it October as well, just because South Carolina has a history of going bananas in this October time of year. So I do think Alabama gets stunned by South Carolina, and South Carolina moves on to go 7-1 at this point. All right, so up next we have at Ole Miss. So at Ole Miss is on November 1st. I do think when it comes to Ole Miss that they do get a loss here. Just having this brutal stretch of games of at LSU, Oklahoma at home, Alabama at home. I do think Lane Kiffin will have his team ready to go. Ole Miss also dominated South Carolina last year, beating them 27-3 last season, and that was even with South Carolina being at home. I think Ole Miss just kind of has South Carolina's number, and this will probably not be as close of a game, especially even coming off of that Alabama high, and South Carolina comes back to earth a little bit. Then they have a bye week, um, huge bye week, super important before they go against at Texas A&M on November 15th. This game will be a very difficult game for the South Carolina Gamecocks. I think Texas A&M's physicality and then South Carolina just coming on the road will be really difficult. I think Texas A&M will be able to run the football against the South Carolina Gamecock offense, and it could come down to a close one again. But I do pick the home team, which is the Texas A&M Aggies in this case. And then the last two games of the season, Coastal Carolina will be a pretty easy one, and then they have Clemson at home. So this is one of the main picked um, upsets by a lot of predictors and analysts out there. But I do think that South Carolina loses to Clemson this year. Clemson is just going to be a special team this year. They just really have Dabo leading them, and Dabo just sounds extremely confident about that team. And I think it's one of his most experienced teams that he's had. When it comes to Clemson, I just think that Clemson's going to be a little too much for South Carolina. I do think it comes down to the fourth quarter for sure. I think Sellers tries to make some plays, but I think it just becomes too much, and Clemson's going to be too motivated coming off of the loss to them last year. So, with all that said, here's the record. I do have South Carolina going 8-4 this year, 5-3 in conference. So they are a really good competitive team. Their best case scenario would be 11-1. This team, if they get hot with Sellers, has potential and star power, but they could also go 4-8. This schedule is absolutely brutal, and if they don't win close games, they could be in some rough shape. But overall, I do see them making a bowl game. I just see that I don't think they're at the top level of the SEC, but they're right under it. Because again, you usually need to get to about that 10-2 record to make the playoffs. So I think they're just under that from some close games. But thank you so much for watching the video. Please like and subscribe and look out for more video content in the future.